Death Within Reach by Alex. Hey, my name is Alex. I went into New York City looking for acid, but couldn't come across anything. As I was about to leave, someone approached me and asked me if I wanted to buy some liquid dust. I said, sure. It was $20 for a full cigarette to be dipped, but I only had 13 on me. She accepted to dip it for $13 and said she would only give me $13 worth of PCP, but she did in fact dip the whole thing anyway. I thought that was weird, so after she dipped, I drove home and planned to smoke it at a friend's party later that night. When I got to the party, I smoked it in my car. I have never done PCP before and pretty much knew nothing about the dosage, which was really dumb for me, so I hotboxed a cig of dust. After the first few pulls, I started to feel really weird, almost stone-like. All of a sudden, I got totally thrown off track of every one of my senses. I could barely see, hear, feel anything. All I knew was that something bad was going on, and I didn't know where I was. I'm not sure how long I was in the car, but it seemed like a really long time. I was so confused as to what was going on at the moment. I thought I was going insane. I couldn't make out a single thing I was looking at. I was completely retarded. I remember seeing a figure knocking on the window and yelling at me. I believe it was one of my friends. He pulled me out and dragged me into the house of the party. I don't remember anything, but I'm just explaining from what everyone was telling me. When I got in the house, they decided to take me into the backyard and put me on a chair. All I remember of that was I couldn't focus on anything, and I had no idea what was going on. I was trying to remember how I got here and what life was all about. I was completely clueless. I felt terrible. I remember hearing people say to me, "Don't put your head back," because I would swallow my tongue. I was trying to spit, but I couldn't. I was foaming at the mouth and trying to get it out by spitting, but I was so comatose that I couldn't do anything about it. After about an hour, they decided that I was so bad that I needed to go to the emergency room because I couldn't move or talk. All I was saying was moaning and groaning sounds. They put me in my car and drove me to my house and carried me to my door, and my dad opened up and saw me. They all told him what I did to myself, and he grabbed me and threw me in his car and sped away to the hospital. I can't really remember much in the car, but he kept on saying, "Keep your eyes open." Right before we got to the hospital, I started to form words. I was saying things like "I am going to die" over and over and over again. I was in such an agony that I wanted to die. Finally, we got to the hospital and they put me in a wheelchair and wheeled me down to a hospital bed and hooked me up on a lot of weird things. I couldn't feel anything they were doing to me because I was so far gone from the real world it wasn't even funny. My parents told me that I kept on saying my ex-girlfriend's name and talking about hockey. I asked them why I was saying those things and they said because I was talking about the two things I love the most in life, my girlfriend and hockey. After being in the hospital for almost all night and all morning, they sent me home to sleep, and I did for a while. I got up and took a shower. I started to understand reality in English when I got home. I basically was waking up from my comatose state, I guess. I felt so bad. I suggest nobody does this ever. It sucks. I almost died. Crazy PCP Trip by Jason Eldridge. It was a Friday night. I was at a friend's house and we were all smoking weed, and I had about 3 bowls before a friend arrived with some PCP. I was the only one who bought some. Later that night we were smoking more weed and I threw PCP in my pipe with some weed and smoked it. When I was done, maybe 20 minutes later, I began to yell very loud at everyone for no reason. Then I uncontrollably began to swing my arms. Then my friend began to complain that if I did not calm down, I would have to leave, and at about this point, I don't remember anything. After the experience was over, my friends reported that I had lost my mind. They said that I was punching holes in the doors and his house, which I later saw, and that I was trying to rip a toilet from the ground, which unbelievably, I did almost succeed before I began to calm down a little bit. After it was all over, I could not believe what I had done. My knuckles were scabed and very sore the next day, and I never in my life had been this violent or careless. And I remember that I could not control what I was doing, nor could anyone else because they had been too scared. All that I know is that I will never do PCP again for me. It was too scary, yet weird of an experience to enjoy. Demons Everywhere by some random girl. I dated for a short while, an abusive guy when I was 15. Now I'm 35. He tended to like me to get drunk or messed up, then date rape me, another story. One night we were cruising around and he saw this friend of his and said he would have some pot. He said that this guy sometimes likes to add hard stuff like PCP. I told Brian that I was way too afraid to do anything like that and to make sure that it wasn't laced. He promised to do so. Unfortunately, I would learn that precaution wasn't taken, whether intentionally or not. So we hook up with this friend and go to the cemetery to get high in his truck. This is in the rural Midwest. The guy had a monster truck on huge tires. He pulled halfway off the path in the cemetery, which was raised, causing the truck to be tilted higher on the driver's side. We smoked the weed, but something wasn't right immediately to me. I got very confused and told this guy that I think his tires must be going low on one side. They laughed, and the next thing, I felt sick and confused. Somehow I got the idea that I had a snake in my stomach, a big boa constrictor. It began to come out. Right there I began to hallucinate that this snake was coming out of my mouth and spilling into the cab of the truck. I started to really freak out. I felt myself lift from my body and lost complete contact with it. I was above the truck looking down into the cab, as if I had x-ray vision. I looked for some time, then slammed back into my body as Brian pulled me out of the truck. I don't remember much else of being at the cemetery, but the next thing I knew was that we were driving down the highway. I looked over to Brian and he said, "Are you horny?" His face then began to turn black and blister, as if he was burning, but there was no flames. He began to look demonic and I got extremely terrified. He took me to this field where he had assaulted me before and did so again. I remember seeing demons flying above us as I appeared into the night sky through the back seat of his car. I don't remember too much else about the experience. I did not expect that I was smoking a laced joint, but the next day Brian admitted that it was. I wish I had the choice then to not take it. It set the precedent for terrifying trips when I experimented with mushrooms and acid years later. Laced with Terror and Insanity by Anthony. What can I say? I was just a curious high school student who wanted to smoke pot. I've seen movies of people being high and thought it was kind of funny. One day at school, some random guy asked me if I wanted to smoke with him. He looked older than me and a little cool, so I said, "Why not?" We walked off campus into an elementary school and went to the woods. He put a generous amount of weed in the soda can pipe and told me how to hit it. I had taken like 5 harsh hits and passed it to him. I then felt like I was in another world. The trees in front of me seemed like a path to a new world. It wasn't too bad, so I thought I was just high. I then took another hit and my legs seemed kind of rubbery and loose. I began to laugh and was trying to say what the hell is going on, but I came out saying, "Duh, duh, duh, duh," and I looked back and everything began to spin and I heard horns and whistles and saw birds and colors and other things just flying around my head. Then I blacked out and I saw myself walk into a tunnel. I then came back to consciousness and I didn't know where I was for a second, and I honestly thought I was dead and lost not knowing where to go. Once I realized I was with him still, I freaked out thinking I smoked crack, and he said no, I dusted the weed. I ran as fast as I could through the sticker bushes, not feeling a thing. He called me back and I said no and walked back to school. I looked at the clock and I was thinking to myself, it felt like we were there for days. Walking was so weird. I felt like I was trying to walk so fast, but I was going normal speed. My legs felt like they were there, but not on my body. When I got to school, it was just letting out and I was so paranoid, looking at everyone thinking that I knew I was high. Students in the hallway seemed to be walking so slow and bunched together. I couldn't even see them. My vision was so blurred. When I got on the bus in front of us seemed to be waving like a shirt blowing in the wind. When I got home, I figured it would be good for me to eat some food. I tried to consume it, but it tasted like nothing and felt like it weighed a lot in my mouth. I spit it out and ran to my room. I looked online to see what dust meant. On the slang dictionary it said PCP, powder or crystal embalming fluid. It caused me to freak out, and I laid my head on my pillow and slept for nearly 5 hours. I felt a little numb and tired, but other than that I was just fine. The moral of the story: know what you're smoking and who you're smoking with. Now I'm 100% drug free. I still remember that day and take caution to everything. That was one crazy drug and I was one of the lucky few who came out okay. At no time did I feel violent, but the whole time I was paranoid. I never want to feel like that ever again. Why did this happen to me? Well, who knows, but you learn from every mistake, I guess.